right, party people, I am here to talk to you about real estate, per usual. So, a couple things. I'm gonna give you some updates on Ohio properties and just what it's like in Ohio, and if I'm gonna stay there, do I want more properties there? And a little bit of drama here and there. So, now, earlier this year, my business partner and I were thinking about selling this house in Ohio that we acquired for very cheap. I'm talking about like less than $20,000. And we had hired this contractor. Long story short, he turned out to be trash, didn't finish the work, lied about certain things. And so we were like, how annoying. Let's just sell it, let's cut our losses and just get rid of it. So we had engaged this real estate agent, and that real estate agent was saying, I can connect you with this auction company and we can see what it might go for at auction, because we bought it for so cheap and really didn't make any repairs. So it's like you can't expect much. So the real estate agent connects us with this auction company, and the auction guy is very responsive, and then eventually he just stops responding. Like it was so weird. He just didn't respond anymore, and we didn't understand what was going on. So we were like, okay. So then we started talking to a different agent, and she was like, well, I can list it for you. And so we told the prior agent, like, hey, your auction guy stopped responding, so we're gonna go with someone else. And she was like, well, let me reach out and see. And so she reaches out and still no response. So we're like, forget it. We're just gonna go with this other agent. Now, this other agent was definitely realistic in setting expectations up front. So she was like, look, the house is crazy. And, there's a huge hole in the roof and a hole in the floor and, overgrown grass. So it's going to be hard to sell it. What were you hoping to get? And so I think this is the point where we started to kind of feel a type of way about working with her. And I'll tell you more about what I mean, but we told her what we were expecting, and it wasn't anything unreasonable, in my opinion. We knew we were going to take a loss, but we told her what we were expecting. She was like, okay. So she lists the property. Now, a few weeks passed. I think it was like 2 weeks that passed, and she had her assistant send us the first offer that came in, or the only offer that came in. And the offer was like for half of what we wanted, or half of what we listed it for. And my business partner responded saying, we're not interested in that offer. And then the agent, not her assistant, the agent responds saying, I gotta find her exact words. Let me look up her exact, I don't know her exact words, but she said something like, it's been 2 weeks and we don't want to be babysitting this property, or something like that. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. I think it was because it was a text message, right? So you don't know the person's tone necessarily, but you still kind of feel like, based on their word choice and how the rest of the message is written, you can imagine how they're talking, right? At least that's how I feel sometimes about text messages. So she said something like, we don't want to babysit. So like, what do y'all want to do? Or something like that. And so, I was a little offended, and also just like, well, if you didn't want to list it, why did you offer to list it? Like, we could have just figured it out with someone else. But now you're making it sound like it's an inconvenience to you, So me and my business partner talked on the side, and we both agreed, like, we didn't like the tone, we didn't like the word choice, and we decided to just figure it out ourselves without her. So I responded to her saying, hey, you can take down the listing, no worries, we'll take it from here. And she just gives like a thumbs up and has her assistant take it down. And I was like, okay, that was a little weird. And I think what makes it weird too is we met with this realtor in person and had a great meal and conversation. And I had worked with this realtor before and I never really felt that kind of energy. And so I didn't know what has shifted with this particular house. And I don't know if it's that she just felt it wasn't worth her time or maybe the amount wasn't big enough. But my thing is, if that's how you felt, why did you list it in the first place? You should have just said, this is too small for me, or I can refer you to someone else, or, you know, anything. Like, why waste everyone's time and list it if you were going to list it begrudgingly? So anyway, that happened. And so we were talking and simultaneously, right? Because there's actually two parallel stories happening. So there's this happening. And then at the same time, I have a duplex in Ohio. And I had that same contractor that had abandoned this house and wasn't doing the work, had done the same thing with my duplex. So I had to find someone else to do the work. And the way that I found this person was very interesting. So it's interesting, like, just if you share your goals and what's going on, like what kind of contacts will come into your life, right? So I have a cousin out there in Ohio through marriage, and you know, I was asking for her help with getting some things set up to get the unit ready for a tenant, a Section 8 tenant. And she said that her landlord has a lot of experience and has a lot of contacts, and she asked her landlord if they knew any contractors or anything. So her landlord sent her the contact information of his guy that he uses as like a handyman, but this guy has his own like deck and fencing company. So I was thinking about fixing my deck at this duplex because, I mean, it was fine, it was okay when I bought it, but between the previous contractor going back and forth up and down the property and just wear and tear, the deck was pretty much falling off of the side of the building. I mean, the ledger board was no longer fully attached to the siding from the back. And so you can actually see, so like if you imagine, if the deck is supposed to be like this and attached to the wall, it was like this, but also like this. So like detaching from the wall and slanted. So I thought about removing the deck and getting the deck repaired, and I had gotten quotes and everything. And so the quotes were like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And I was like, no, not happening. So when she gave me the contact information of this guy, I was like, okay, I didn't know he had a deck company and a fencing company. So I contacted him and I was like, hey, you know, so-and-so gave me your number, blah, blah. I was hoping that you could help me with a couple of things. And he was like, oh, I don't usually work on that side of town, but I'll check it out. So he goes and checks it out, and I tell him, because he FaceTimes me when he gets there, which is not normal. I feel like most contractors don't do that. Most contractors are actually horrible. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But he FaceTimes me, and you know, he's walking through the property and like, you know, I see this, I see that, blah, blah. And then he starts talking about the deck. And he goes, by the way, like, I have a deck and fencing company. So like, I do this for a living. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I was thinking of just demolishing the deck because it's cheaper, you know, like this is not a cheaper to keep her situation. This is a cheaper to get rid of her situation. And I was like, to demolish it, it's only going to cost me less than $1,000, but to fix the deck or rebuild the deck, it's going to be between $10,000 and $20,000. He was like, that is correct. As someone who has a deck company. But he said, you know, I'm not an investor, but I've been working with people who own property for a while, and I've done some properties where I've prepared them for inspection. He was like, I'm pretty sure you cannot demolish the deck because you have to meet the fire building requirements, and I think there has to be 2 ways to enter and exit each unit. And I was like, whoa, like nobody told me this. I don't know about this, you know? He was like, I'm gonna double check, but I think you might have to keep the deck and repair it. And I was like, oh my gosh. I felt like this property was turning into a money pit. Anyway, so the guy continues to do his walkthrough or whatever. And later, you know, he tells me, you know, I spent another 30 minutes looking at that deck and I actually think I could fix it for pretty cheap. And I was like, interesting. He was like, and I did confirm that you cannot get rid of the deck. And I was like, dang. So this guy that I ended up hiring to help me just get a couple little things done, like, what was the thing? There was like install carbon monoxide detectors, put in some railing, like little things. Turns out he ended up being able to help me with something very big, which was fix that deck. So you just never know like who's in your network and who knows who. And he did a great job and he did it fast. And my favorite part is that he documents things. So sends me progress videos just on a regular, okay? Now the bad part is that he's super arcane in his processes. So like hand writes everything, does not own a computer, asked me to mail him a check, which is an absolute no. So definitely some things to work out, but I was like, oh, this is a relief, you know, someone who actually does what they say they're gonna do. Yeah, so that was happening. So I told my business partner, like, look, I found this guy, you know, he has a deck and fencing company, so he can't do everything, but he's reliable and trustworthy so far. And maybe he can check his network and take a look at the house and see if he can repair it. Because up to this point, we had gotten several quotes and a lot of the quotes would essentially cost so much that when we list the house for sale, it wouldn't add up, right? Like we wouldn't make any profit, we would actually lose money. And so the only option would be to rent it out, which we were trying to avoid. But we also just didn't want to spend that much on the rehab. So I was like, you know, maybe this guy can take a look at it and give us a quote. So we went from about to sell it at auction to listing the house on the MLS for sale to having somebody else look at it. Okay, so this property has been through a roller coaster. But anyway, that's the update with that house. And then with my duplex, finally got everything fixed up. The Section 8 piece, another story for another day. I was preparing it for a Section 8 tenant. That did not work out. We will talk about that later, so make sure you tune in for that. But at the end of the day, I did get a tenant pretty quickly, and so far, so good. I'll keep you updated with that. And yeah, and another time I will tell you the story about how Section 8 is just different in different markets. Okay, let's just say that. We'll talk about some things to look out for. So make sure that you like, subscribe so that you get notifications for when those next ones come out, so you can get those tips on your own real estate journey.